Well folks, how the hell are yous? Tonight we have an old tool teardown for yous. An old Hitachi tool. Not a cookie, the proper old school Hitachi one. And a metal case. Really wish new tools would start coming again. And metal boxes. Something so satisfying about popping those metal clasps. Look at this for an old girl. This is an old Hitachi DV20V2 hammer drill. 240 volt as well. And this thing has been barely used. Look at this for a yoke. You know it's an old tool when they don't go on about the power. Their selling point is forward and reverse, an electronic unit. As in, it can go forward and reverse, and it has a variable speed trigger. They were the big selling points back in the day. This one, she's a 2-speed hammer or precision drill with a variable speed trigger that goes forward and reverse. High tech for the time, plus an actual keyed chuck as well. And not just any one. It is actually a Rome chuck. That's a good quality, decent chuck here. This thing has been barely used. Even the chuck looks like it's drilled 1 or 2 holes, and that's it. Barely a mark on her. Supposedly working fine. We'll test her out here now. We'll do a full strip down on it. She's a DV20V2. No year on her. Badge is still perfect. The wee CE mark up the top. Hitachi Koki, the original name. This is Tokyo, Japan. They used to be Hitachi, then they became Hitachi Koki, and eventually recently they've changed the name now to Hikoki instead of Hitachi Koki. So modern Hikoki tools used to be called Hitachi, or if you're in the States, Metabo HTP is also Hitachi. Here we call them Hikoki, and in the States they call them Metabo HTP because the Hitachi also bought out Metabo, so they're called Metabo Hitachi Power Tools, but here we call them Hikoki. Same tools, different names. Let's get tore into this thing. One of the best things about it is the box. An actual metal case in the proper green Hitachi colour. This one actually comes with the right chuck key as well, which is always a plus. Normally they get lost. Even still has the depth gauge for the handle. Inside, we molded case, RS, this is from Radionics. It is from Radionics. RS components. That's an odd one. Instruction manual. This is how you know it's a proper old tool. Not only does it come with a full parts diagram and parts list, so they had the intention of you repairing this if you ever needed to. Here are all the parts if you needed it. On top of that, they actually showed you how to fix it. So obviously your forward and reverse, your different modes. Give you a quick wee diagram of how it's wired and where your brushes are. How to use the drill, hammer action going forward. How to change from hammer mode. The actual size your brush should be. 12mm long. You need to change whenever you get down to 5mm. Full name and description of all the actual parts in it. Then general operating instructions then, just how to actually run your drill. And all your spec of your drill as well. The different models, the power output, the beats per minute. Applications. These old manuals had everything in them. Bit sizes, what you can actually put into here. And then instead of health and safety, practical handling procedures. How to use your drill practically. No health and safety standards in these ones. And maintenance and inspection, how to actually care for your tool and look after it. Shame modern tools don't come with them as well. Anyway, enough of the case. Onto the tool. First off, see what it actually sounds like. It actually still smells like a new tool. Getting that whiff of new motor smell, nothing beats it. That's your high speed. Which is in hammer mode. And precision mode then takes off the hammer action. Now, might be a hammer drill, but there's no proper hammer action out of it. These here are like a modern cordless tool or precision drill as well. They just have two gears on the spindle and they just rattle over the top of each other. They're literally just two flat gears with wee concave teeth facing each other, and they just run over the top of each other, causing the chuck to go up and down slightly. It's more rattle than hammer. So not a proper hammer drill, more of a rattle drill, but still, they get the job done. Last thing, the variable speed trigger as well. You can also set the speed as well by changing this wee wheel. All that's doing, it's basically just a little lock. It only allows the trigger to go on so far. It's just using the variable speed off the trigger to actually stop it at a certain point. You wind it all the way out, then it has full power just. Well, strip it apart, see what it's like inside. Not often you see these old ones coming on now. Normally, maybe just a set of brushes, but when they get to this sort of age, generally they're coming on with a burnt out motor or something. You don't get them in regularly for gearbox problems. So we'll strip it down, get all the way into the gearbox and have a proper look at it. First thing, I'll take that chuck off. So we'll wind her back. We're removing the chuck on these ones, as like you're meant to do, with an Allen key. Same as a modern drill, or some of them at least. They have a left hand threaded screw in the centre of the chuck to hold it on. This hasn't actually done an awful lot, so I'm hoping it's not too tight. But even if it is, it's not that big a deal. Because unlike a modern one, we're using the gearbox to hold it. These old corded drills, and some modern ones as well, mind you, have an actual flat spot on the spindle. So you can actually put a flat spanner into that to lock the spindle when you're knocking these things off. We'll try with a hammer here first. That's not working. So we'll go with the right technique. Let's take a spanner onto it. Even the older Rome chucks, they never actually felt all that solid, just like a modern one, but they obviously lasted. Made in Germany. For now, get onto the handle section. Hitachi drills, Hitachi tools in general, you can always tell when you're working on Hitachi from the screws. They always have these here gold ones. One of the older ones like this, but the newer ones then would have a black one. But they're a proper PH2 head. They always had a washered pan head screw. You always knew you had a Hitachi just by the screws. Should have went that way. So you get your switch. We noise suppression capacitor down here. Lead, cable clamp, grommet, big heavy grommets in these things as well. And up here was actually your forward reverse switch. It's just a little toggle switch with a rubber cover on it. Everything's soldered together. Nicely soldered at that. And the leads go into your brushes then. Always had little chokes on them as well. Brushes themselves are on these little black holders, just like a modern Hitachi or a Koki. Held on by this flat spade. End of the brush. It's a female spade connector. That barely even been switched on yet. Still has the chamfer up on the edge though. Then brush holders, still used today in modern drills. These wires here are actually going to your field, and your black and red ones coming down from your switch. Even the switch is different in this thing. It's a Nico switch. They would have been an expensive switch in their day as well. That out of the way for now. Get onto the actual motor section. Now, look at that for a field. Look how much lacquer is on that. Would you even call that lacquer? Like resin or something? I think it is actually a resin. That's a massive thick coat. Them windings are going nowhere. On top of that, you have little silicone bumps as well. They're actually off this air deflector. You go into here. And it's just to keep the field pressed down on. The field doesn't actually have any screws securing it. It's actually this air deflector pinned against the body, the gearbox, the drill, pushing down on the field. Barely even any dust in anything, apart from around here. Always liked this colour Hitachi. These are the good proper ones. In later years then, and before Hitachi became Hikoki, they changed it to like a darker sort of green colour. It wasn't really as nice. You sort of knew the quality wasn't really the same as well. When you got one of the ones like this here, you knew it was a good quality tool. What way is that? Is that screwed on? What kind of grease was on it? Must have been good quality stuff because it hasn't actually separated. It's still together. It's not actually black moly grease. But is that colour from new? That's not from the actual drill being used. It's odd stuff. Really thick actually for this kind of a drill. What way is this? So, your main spindle is just onto a steel bush. Your clutch then is onto a bearing down here. It's actually a made in England NMB bearing, a 608. Plastic sleeve on an aluminium housing. Your actual selector then, all it is actually just two plastic buttons and a metal bar. And all it's doing is one side is lower than the other. So all that's actually happening there is when the bar's in, it's thicker. When you push it over, there's a little chamfer that drops down. So the bar is lower on one side. So whenever it's pushed forward like this, it's up higher. It's pushing. And this little ball bearing on the actual spindle shaft pushes against that. Keeps the shaft pushed forward. So it's clearing the two gears inside. Whenever you change the lever over to the other side, letting the spindle move back a little bit further. When it goes back then, it's able to engage in the gears. So whenever it's forward, it's pushing in. It doesn't have the room to move back to engage the gear. A very, very simple mechanism. Actual transmission gear then. No clutch on it. She's just been driven by the armature. This is driving this. Armature spins and drives this gear. So this gear then transfers the power over here. So it's either engaging this one or that one down there, depending on which gear you're in. So it's forward like this. So when it's back like this, it engages this back gear. You change the other one. This one's free and it's driving the bottom gear, giving you your two different speeds. Big heavy change lever, has a steel back as well. Normally these are all plastic. Actually very heavy duty. Don't want to waste all the grease. I'm not going to have anything that good to put back into it. Your spring on the bottom, and your gear sits on that. So that's the top gear. This is the bottom gear. The center of them is totally round, so these don't actually drive the spindle at all. This spindle is hobbed with an actual gear cut the whole length of it, which this or this one doesn't actually engage with. So that's sitting on and it's just free spinning. It's this wee middle one that actually engages. So this that has the actual gear in the middle. So this is what's driving it, and it's the pins on top that engage the gears. And there's this change lever. It's actually sitting in between. So depending on where this is, she'll be lifting this centerpiece up and down. These two will be sandwiched in between. And depending on where it goes, we'll either engage in the bottom one or the top one, giving your two speeds. So these aren't moving. They're actually engaged on this jack shaft the whole time. So this is always spinning, and these are always spinning. And this is only going to be spinning on the gear that's actually selected onto it. Take the grease out for now. Quite a bit packed in there as well. So on the bottom, that's your hammer gear down in there. Here's little wedge teeth. You can see the wear that's on it, so this was actually being used as a hammer drill. So that's one. And that's the other one. So that's all the hammer drill is. So the matching one of these here is this one. When they sit together, push against each other, they're literally just going over these little wedges, being lifted up and dropping back down again. That's all the hammer there actually is out of this thing. Top end you have a little oil seal. Underneath that you have a bearing. It's a 6002 NSK made in England. Nice quality bearing as well. say that will be most likely pressed on. And there's an actual oil seal on that too. I'll not take that off because I'll end up destroying the oil seal. And the bearing then is a slack fit because the shaft actually moves back and forth. Because whenever you select hammer mode, this here wedge is taken away. It allows us to move back to engage in this gear. Whenever you take off hammer mode, choose as a precision drill for steel or something, this is pushed forward and wedged forward. This gear can't get to the other one, so it just removes the hammer action. So that's her. That is the insides of an old Hitachi DV20V2 hammer action drill. I also give some of the parts we cleaned down just to clean some of the grease off them. Whenever wee bits of dust that was actually on them. And as well, because we have it apart now, might be able to see what year it was made. Because most plastic parts will have a date stamp on them. There we go. That's the model of the machine. See down here, see one's like a wee clock on it. It'll have 12 numbers and an arrow. If you look in between the arrow, 1996, and then the 12 numbers are the months of the year. The arrow's pointing to number 3. So that was actually made in the mold in March in 1996. So if it was made in March 1996, it was probably assembled and on sale probably the same year. So if it wasn't 1996, it would have probably sold around 1997, or at least on the shelves for sale at that time. So that means this thing could actually be around 28 years old, probably around 27 years old, at least when it was sold from. But the actual parts in this are 28 years old. Amazing how they actually built back in the day. Way more effort put into everything. Plus, components on them were actually a lot simpler. Like the actual change mechanism for these gears. Instead of having 15 or 20 parts to change the gears, basically just have 4. 2 gears, a selector, and a change lever. That there's a heavy duty change lever. And a nice simple mechanism that's not going to go wrong. Plus it's actually easy to put together and change. It's just this here boy holding this under the housing. And that's the wee dimples on the end of it. And the dimples in here that actually give you your detent for locking onto the 2 gears. So whenever you change this in positions, so that's what's actually clicking onto. Very simple, very effective. Now, to get it all back together again, and of course reassembling it if you did have to do something like this yourself. You still have your instruction manual with the parts breakdown to help you put it back together again. Right, let's get this back together again. So this one, the small spring, is going to be sitting down here. Keeps this pressed back. C-clip holes are on. That's sitting on the bottom. Get the bearing into here. It's just sitting inside the housing. That's what's actually driving your jack shaft. On top of the spring. Big gear goes on. And your actual selector gear then. And that's what's actually turning the spindle. It's the only thing that's locked onto it. Now whenever that one's on, before you put on the other one, imagine you put in this change lever. So that is just hooking on to this little selector gear. It's that going up and down that selects the 2 gears. So they go down onto the bottom one or being lifted up to the top one. The pins on it locate into the pins on the gears. And actually stops these 2 from engaging at the one time. It's also the change lever itself. They're actually sitting on top of the change lever. So that change lever is actually separating the 2 away from each other. So there's a gap in between. To hold this on, it's just a wee square spring. It goes down. It It also has your detent for locking onto position, for selecting the 2 gears. And that's it. That's the little gearbox. Last thing then is your drive. So your motor's driving this one, and that is driving these 2 gears at the same time. That's just whatever position this is in. It's allowing only one to spin. So when you're on speed 1, it's lowered down and it's engaged on the bottom gear. So this is turning the bottom gear, which is locked onto the selector. So they're turning the spindle, and this top one is free floating. It's not connected to anything. And whenever you change the gear, the spindle lifts up, clears the bottom one, so it's not engaged in the bottom. It's hooked onto the top one. So this drive is now driving this top gear, which is connected onto the selector, turning the spindle. Last thing then, little top spring for up here with the washer on it. Also just going to put a little bit of extra grease in there. Not much, just something a little bit more liquid, just to help it. Also forgot the seal, have to get that on. This plastic sleeve just goes over the aluminium gearbox housing. The 2 halves go together. You also to keep this plate on, because that's what's holding in this wee selector. One big heavy screw. And the air deflector I think is doing more than one job. That's pushed in. That's what's giving you detent for your hammer and precision drill. These little feet are actually pushed against this part of the actual air deflector. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And that all goes into here. This needs to go over the top of here. That sits down in there. And then the C-clip. The wiring is always the awkward bit. This was on first. I'll just put the brushes on first actually. Slide onto the holder. One side you can see the spade. Lead goes onto the spade. Locks the brush in. That's in there. Dropped under there. Same on the other side. Drop that on. And we can get the handle. Lock that in place first. And we can try to get all the wiring back in. That there. Put on your cable clamp. Now it's easy when the wires are already formed. But whenever you're putting on something new, like a new field or new wiring loom or something, it can be very awkward trying to get wires back into place then. But when you've just taken them out, just to put them back in, it's generally not that bad. Thought there was a wee bit of corrosion up there, but it's not. Just looks like some sort of green dye or Loctite. That should be the handle. Finally the chuck. I'll just use a motor to drive it on. Start it by hand first, just in case you would cross thread it. Slap it on. Open her up again. Drop in your screw. And that's her. One old Hitachi DV20V2 old school Hitachi impact drill, hammer action and precision drill. A lot of people would say, what's the point of these things now whenever you have cordless tools? If you have a lot of holes to drill, this here's the type of thing you want. You actually want a precision drill. Fair enough, the hammer action on them, it's only just there so you can actually use it as a hammer drill if you're stuck. It's far better as an actual precision drill. Sticking around the drill only and drilling holes in steel or something. The likes of this here is going to drill a lot more holes in steel than the likes of a cordless tool. Cordless is handy, but these here can do a lot more work. Obviously, because just these here have a far bigger motor. Bigger motor, they can take more power, they can run for longer and do more work. These things are going to do more holes in steel than the likes of a cordless machine. You don't see them as much, but anybody doing any sort of work will be still using a corded drill. Cordless hasn't taken over everything just yet. These things will never go away. You get way more power out of lead than you do from a battery. That's her, folks. The Hitachi DV20V2 corded precision drill. I don't know what to do with this thing now. Put her up for sale or put her on display. I'm more inclined to keep this one, simply because it's a nice old Hitachi drill. Like the old Makitas myself, but you can't beat these old girls either. These were fantastic wee machines. That is just a thing of beauty, and a nice Hitachi green box. She's 28 years old. I think we'll hold on to her until she's at least 30, so she's a proper vintage. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this wee old school Hitachi teardown. Stay tuned. There are plenty more machines being repaired, plenty more teardowns to come. For now, thanks for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Give us a wee like and a follow down below if you're enjoying the videos. Cheers for watching. Cheerio.